Hey there guys, and welcome back to my August reading vlog. Now in August I'm trying to become a professor for the Magical Readathon. Today is actually the 3rd of August and I just finished my first book, which was Unravel Me by Tara Murphy. This is the second book in the Shadow Me series and this was a reread for me. I just wanted to catch up with this series before I read the last book that came out this year, and I just loved it. This series is just so dramatic and fun, and I really enjoyed rereading this part. There's some really, nice scenes between Warner and Juliet in this one, and I ate them up because I love the drama. So this is my first book done. I would give it probably 3.5 or 4 stars. Like the second half, definitely 4 stars. This first half is more like 3 stars, I think. So yeah, it takes a little bit of time to get going, but when it's going, it's going. And so right now, all I want to do is continue with the series, but unfortunately, it's not on my TBR for the Magical Readathon. So I think the next thing I want to do now is read Fracture Me in this little novella thingy. I've already read Destroy Me because that is set between the first and second book, and now Fracture Me is set between the second and the third book. So I will finish that off, I think, later tonight or maybe tomorrow, and then I will go into my real August TBR.
Okay guys, I got so lucky at the library today. You're not ready for this. So I found Normal People by Sally Rooney in the English edition. They're There by Tommy Orange in the English edition. The Library of the Unwritten by H.J. Hagwith in the English edition. Then the next 3 volumes in this Barefoot Gen series about Hiroshima. Then this is a nonfiction about a woman who found out that her father was actually a Nazi, and I think also a very high up, Nazi in the Second World War, and she's a black woman, so this is a book about, her struggles, I guess, finding that out. Then I found this Joe Baker book. The English title is just Longburn, so it's a Jane Austen kind of retelling, focusing on the servants in the house. And lastly, I found a horror store, and I will keep this for October because, I'm very excited about this. This by Grady Hendrix. So I have 9 incredible books to read. I'm so excited.
So I don't really remember what I told you in my last update, but today's the 4th of August, and I finished the Fracture Me story in this little collection, so I can tick off this collection as well for my rereading this series. So I can go straight on into the final book of the first trilogy, Ignite Me, but that will have to wait for a little bit because I'm doing the Magical Readathon, and the first book I picked up for that is The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware, and I'm reading that for the challenge to read a thriller. I think that is for Defense Against the Dark Arts. Yeah, so I'm not really far into that. It starts off with a woman being robbed in her own home, which is something I can relate to on some level because I actually was burglared before, but I wasn't home at that point, so I do understand some of the feelings she's having, but I didn't have quite the traumatic experience, so yeah, can't really say anything about that yet. And then also last night I finished The Chilling Adventures of the Brina, the 3rd part of that, so there will be 1 more part. And wow, was that a nice ending. I really didn't expect that, and I have something in my eyeball, great. But the moment with Aunt Zelda at the end, She's just the best. I love her so much. I love her so much. Like, she's my favorite she's my favorite character in that show. And so the end made me really happy for her. So we'll see how that works out in this last part that we'll get. But I also want to start a new show, and I decided to go with this Miss Fisher's crime series on Netflix, and it seems like it's set in Australia. So yeah, we'll see. I'll start it right now with my lunch.
So, I finished the first part and she arrived on the boat. Which for some reason I didn't really know it was set on a boat because, yeah, I'm stupid like that. But all I can think right now is please don't let this book be as bad as Into the Drowning Deep. So, I just finished part 2 in this book. And I now know who the woman in cabin 10 is and what possibly happened to her, or maybe not. There was a scene right now that I found a little bit disturbing that was almost like, well, it was kind of a sexual attack and it felt very weird. So if you're sensitive to that, I would not recommend this book. It was a weird scene. Yeah, just wanted to mention that. So I just finished part 3, and I must say this is a rather slow read for me. Also, I have a cat there, which is awesome. These are my feet. Hi. She's so long. But yeah, this is, it's quite hard for me to read because there's a lot about, gaslighting, stuff like that, making a woman believe she's crazy because of what she saw. And that's just something that, triggers me a lot, which I didn't expect. But yeah, it's very hard to read for me right now. And I had a lot of bad dreams last night, and I feel like it had something to do with that. So yeah, making my way through this slowly. One thing I find a little bit weird is that at the end of each part, you get emails or something like that. Like, we had like a part of a, paper. And it's always in the future. And that confused the hell out of me at first. So, yeah, we always know what kind of happens because these emails and stuff are in the future. It's a little bit weird. But, yeah, apart from that, not quite sure how I feel about this yet. So, I just finished my audiobook, A Song Below Water by Bethany C. Morrow.
So it's the 6th of August. Today is the 75-year kind of anniversary of the Hiroshima bomb. So I think today is a very important day to remember that war is wrong and there are no heroes in war and it's just suffering. That's just something I wanted to say. Yeah, very, very important day in history, I think. I was just on the supermarket shopping for some food, and I finished my audiobook, A Song Below Water, right when I got into the door, which was perfect. And I decided to give it 4 stars, I think. I had a couple of problems with this book, but then I enjoyed other parts of the book immensely. So what I loved about this book is obviously we are following 2 black girls and they're in high school, and this is kind of an urban fantasy which is, this is not like a traditional urban fantasy, but I would say it is an urban fantasy because this is set in Portland, but in this world there are certain supernatural creatures that are real. So our one character is a siren, and since only black women can be sirens, these are very much frowned upon, and there are a lot of ways to oppress sirens. So our main character isn't out, she's hiding that, and her father is always very, very afraid that anyone will find out. And there is other species, like one, I still don't know really what they're called. Iloko or something like that. I don't know. Since I listened to the audiobook, I'm always a little bit confused by the words, if it's like something made up or something I'm not familiar with. But these are kind of similar. They also have some power in their voices, but since it can be anyone, it can be men as well, and there's no, certain race that belongs to this kind of creature. It could be anyone. So they are very highly seen in this society. They are like the popular ones, basically. And they can do anything, and people always say that, they're doing perfect and stuff like that. And so we follow these two girls. One of them is a siren, and the other one, we're not really sure at the beginning if she's human or if there's something going on with her. But she had something very tragic happening to her when she was a child, and so later on she moved in with the family of the siren girl, and since then they've become like best friends and basically sisters. And I really love the dynamic of the two girls together. I think they're very supportive of each other. And even though they do things wrong, they address it, they talk about it, and they forgive each other, which I think is awesome. Also, they're not only talking about boys. They are, but they're also talking about tons of other things. So you really believe that they are best friends, And so I like the relationship of the two girls. I also like the relationship the two girls have with the parents that they're living with, because obviously the siren girl has a very different relationship with her father, because he's always so afraid and he's always telling her what not to do. And sometimes she's just like, well, if I don't do that, it's so much more suspicious as if I would do that. But yeah, so she's trying to please her father, but on the other hand, she doesn't really see the point. She knows it's dangerous to be a siren, but his actions seem a little bit extreme at times. And obviously, the other girl really likes these parents because they took her in and they're caring for her. They have a very, very good relationship. So I like that whole dynamic. I liked a couple of scenes that were so vivid for me. Like, for example, I told you in my last vlog about the scene where the siren girl is stopped by the police when she's driving alone. And that was just such a, heart-wrenching scene for me. I was so afraid I couldn't stop listening because I had to know that she would get out of there being okay, basically. And then so I really liked some parts of it, but what I disliked about this book is that it's quite hard to get into it because this world isn't really explained, and so you're trying to figure out what's going on, like which kind of creatures are real and which are not. For example, the non-siren girl, she is dressing up as a mermaid on the Ren Fair, and so mermaids don't exist, I guess, or maybe they do, and it's just hard to navigate, you know what I mean? So I found it hard to be thrown into this world and being like, what the hell is going on? And then I feel like sometimes the plot was a little bit difficult to follow, like sometimes you weren't really sure why that scene is in there at all or something like that. So with some things I just didn't really understand why they were there. They felt like digressions in the plot. And then on the other hand, I felt like it was very easy to see what the other girl is once you're getting into the story, and they don't figure it out until the very end. So it's kind of frustrating because you're the whole time like, yeah, I know what you are. Like, it's not that difficult. Like, you just, count 1 + 1 + 1 and you get to the point. So I thought that was a little bit frustrating. But yeah, I guess overall, I enjoyed listening to this. I think it's a very quick and fun read for summertime. As I said, I love reading about mermaids and sirens and stuff like that, even though I heard people say don't expect too much of that because it's not really set in the water. It doesn't really have to do a lot with water, so you're never like underwater. But it is it's still fun, and I think there's probably a lot of symbolism in here, and I'm not, well educated enough to really understand what the author is trying to say. So, I mean, the part of being like, only black women can be sirens and so sirens are shunned, I think that's quite obvious, but I think there's more subtle things there as well. That for me was hard to see whether there's kind of a metaphor in it or whether it is just fantasy. You know what I mean? I don't know enough about, being black in America to really understand all the depth of the story, I think. But yeah, it was a fun time. I really liked it. And now you have a very long rant from me about this book. So today's the 9th of August, and I just came back from a trip to see my family. I was gone for 2 days, and while I was driving, back and forth, I managed to listen to a lot of my new audiobook. Now, I picked up Beauty Queens by Libba Bray, and I must say I'm so pleasantly surprised by this book, because when you hear talk about Libba Bray, people usually don't mention Beauty Queens. It has been popular on booktube a couple of years ago, but I felt like a lot of the reviews back then were mixed, but somehow I just really fancied it, so I picked up the audiobook, and it is actually read by Libba Bray herself, and it's very funny. I think I would not pick this up as a physical book, but the audiobook is really, really good. And this book is basically a retelling of The Lord of the Flies, I think, but it is set in a dystopian world where America is just a little bit more, Fox News than right now. And so there is a plane with 50 girls who won a beauty pageant, and they are on their way to a very big contest. I think it's called the Teen Dreamers, Miss Teen Dreamers contest. And then the plane crashes on an island, and about, I think, 15 of the girls survive. They're the only ones, and so they have to kind of survive on this island where there's seems to be nothing at all, but there's a little bit of background as well. And I just think that this is a book that is very cynical, because you have all these beauty queens who most of the time are not the most intelligent, and they are stuck on this island, and they have to get their priorities straight. And then you find out more and more of the secrets of these girls, because not everybody is what they seem to be. And I was actually surprised how diverse this book is. So you have Miss Colorado, sorry, Miss Colorado. She's a black girl. Miss California is of Indian descent, so from India. And then you have a trans character, a trans girl, and you also have a lesbian. And so it's all about, these girls trying to survive and, finding out their secrets and sharing stuff. And for the first time, being together with girls and working together with girls instead of being in a contest and, competition to other girls. And yeah, I listened to about 5 hours of that overall. So I have 9 hours left now of this audiobook, and it's just really fun. Oh yeah, and I forgot, there's also a character with impaired hearing, and she lost her what's it called, hearing aid, something like that. I forgot what it's called in English. During the plane crash. So yeah, it's a fun and very diverse read, and I started caring about a lot of these girls. So yeah, I'm interested to see where this book goes and if they're ever rescued. I also managed to read a little bit more in The Woman in Cabin 10. I'm currently on page 231, and this book is really difficult for me to read because the main character is always tired, and so whenever I start reading, after a couple of pages, I get super tired as well. I'm still not sure whether I like it or not. I feel like with thrillers, you always have to get to the end, and if the conclusion is good, it's a good thriller, and if it's not, it isn't. So yeah, can't say too much about that one. And then I went to a used bookstore and I picked up 2 books which I quickly wanted to share. One is A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway, because Carolyn, she has a booktube channel and she's also one of the co-hosts of the Dark Academics book club. She was raving about this book, and I know that my partner really dislikes Hemingway, so I wanted to see for myself. And then I picked up a book I almost got as an audiobook, and that is Graceling by Christine Kishore, and this beautiful paperback edition. So yeah, that was a very successful mini haul. So it's the 10th of August and I finally finished my first book for the Magical Readathon. So I finished The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. This will give me my A in Defense Against the Dark Arts, and I think I would give this 3.5 stars probably. The ending was quite gripping, but I feel like the book took way too long. I did like the atmosphere and the setting of the boat. It was, you know, it was a nice atmosphere for a thriller, I think. But the part where, you know, Laura isn't believed, isn't believed when she says what she saw, it was just a little bit much for me, and I had a lot of nightmares that, you know, didn't all have to do with this, but certainly didn't help. The ending is quite quick then and fast-paced, and I thought it was quite easy to see what's going on, so it wasn't really hard to guess. But yeah, it was an okay thriller, I think, if you're into these kind of things, but not like super well done or anything like that. Now I hope with the next book I will be faster, and I want to pick up Spontaneous by Erin Stormer, and this has a larger font and I think even a couple pages less, and this is the book I will read for my A in Charms. Today's the 12th of August and I'm now around 140 pages into Spontaneous, and so far I'm enjoying it, but I'm not loving it. I found it quite interesting because for the first couple of chapters I wasn't even sure what the gender of the main character is, because this is about a girl called Mara, but it's written by a man, and I have seen that a couple of reviewers didn't like that. I must say that I'm not too bothered by it. I don't really mind reading from a character who is, you know, not like a classical female character. Mara is, you know, a wild girl, basically, and she does dabble in drugs, so if you don't like reading about drug use, stay away from this book. They have played a pretty big part in this book so far, so I would not recommend this. And so, yeah, this is about Mara, and her school peers start exploding, basically. And meanwhile, she's also falling in love, or, you know, having some kind of a romantic relationship starting. So I really like the writing style. It's very unusual. It's chaotic and wild and raw. But if you're open for that, I think this is a lot of fun. And so, yeah, I have, I think, about 200 pages, a little more than 200 pages, 210, I think, left. So, yeah, I will continue with this and hopefully tell you soon what I thought about it in the end. Also, I listened to a little bit more of my audiobook, Beauty Queens by Libba Bray, and I think I have about 6 hours and a little bit left. And I really like this book. Now, we had a couple of dramatic scenes now where some things are coming to light because the beauty queens are not alone on this island as they thought, and now some of them are finding out about it. And what I love about this book is that from the beginning you have a couple of characters you don't really like. Like Tiara is a very ignorant, naive person, and at first she's racist and stuff like that, so you're like, ooh. And then Taylor is a very headstrong girl, and she believes in this you know, beauty contest thing, and she kind of is like a natural leader, but in a way like Trump is a leader. Like, she doesn't really care too much about the others. She just really likes telling people what to do, basically. And so as the story progresses, you get to know these girls. You know, you're kind of stuck with them on this island. And as you get to know them, you realize there is so much more to them than you can see from the outside. And I love that, because you don't have this classical putting girls against girls. You know, they're all lovable in a way, and yeah, I just really like that. And so we just had a part where we got to know Taylor a ton more, and why she is in this and why she's the way she is. And even though I can't really identify with her as a character, she's very different from me, I still like her, and I still want her to thrive and to get off this island and be safe. So that's something I really enjoy about this book. It's like very feminist in a way, because, you know, it shows you that every girl has a side to her that can be loved. So yeah, really enjoy that. So I'm 240 pages into Spontaneous now. I'm pretty sure I can finish this book tonight. I have a little bit more than 100 pages left. The insta-love got strong in this one, I have to say. But there was also a very good, very accurate sex scene, which I didn't expect and I really, really liked. So yeah, this is enjoyable. I'm still not loving it, but it's enjoyable. Then with Beauty Queens, yesterday I got to the point where the pirates landed, and oh my god, this really changed the pace of the story again, and I'm not quite sure how I like it, but it's not too much left of the book now. I think a little bit more than 5 hours, so I hope that we will get some action soon, not with the boys, but you know, with the whole spy plot in the background. I hope that they will finally go and figure out what's going on and save their world now. So yeah, we'll see about that. But also some steam is about to happen. I can already see it, and I just really, really, yeah, I think it's funny how these books kind of work together right now in my head, because it's not what I usually read at all. So I just finished Spontaneous in the bathtub, which was lovely. Sorry, the lighting is very horrible right now, but that's the vlog part of it, so I don't care. In the end, I must say I liked this book. I still don't love it. I came out giving it 3.5 stars. I think it's a very unique book. It's a very, very messy book, which you can already expect if you know that it's about teenagers exploding, basically. But also the main character is very messy, and I just liked the ending as well. Actually, I was close to tears at one point, because what it comes down to is almost like, you know, this is a book about surviving, I would say. So the main character is telling us all these things that are happening, and meanwhile she is obviously surviving, so she can tell us about it. And I think, you know, this is just, it just portrays how sometimes in your life you just go through things and you don't even know really what you're doing them for, or, you know, you can't really appreciate them at the moment. And this kind of felt like that, you know, how people always say, oh, school is so good right after they're done with it and they have to face the real world. And I'm definitely one of those people, you know. I would gladly go back to school, because, you know, having that unit you belong to, basically that place and those people, your peers, is a very unique experience that you don't have after, you know, finishing your education, because that's the only time in your life where you're basically stuck with people who are all your age. So yeah, I kind of felt like, you know, reminiscing about that final year of school where, you know, you just stumble through and try to survive and try to do well, maybe. Not our main character, though. But you don't even appreciate it, kind of. So I don't know if that was the purpose of the story, but I thought it was fun and it reminded me of that kind of feeling, and it had some very interesting scenes that I think, you know, are good in a YA novel. As I said, there was a very realistic sex scene in here. There was talking about, you know, I said there was kind of insta-love in here, and the book actually called it out later, and I thought that was very helpful, because maybe if you are a teenager, you might think, you know, you've met someone and it's the love of your life, and like 3 weeks later you realize it's not. And I like that aspect of the story, like dealing with, you know, feelings fading again, that they can go away. And my arm hurts. And I think the strongest part actually at the end of the book is the theme of friendship. And I love that. I really, really love that. And I know people don't like the ending. I actually like the ending. And I know what happens in my version. So, yeah. I just really like the ending. And so yeah, as I said, I give it 3.5 stars. It's not like groundbreaking or anything, but it's a fun read and it doesn't really hurt anyone, I guess. So, except for all the people that explode. So yeah, I will have my dinner now and watch some more Miss Fisher. And yeah, I also wanted to talk about the book I wanted to start next, but I forgot to pick it up. So Spontaneous gave me my A in Charms, and the next book I want to start now is A Man Called Ove, and this is also on my Scallywagathon TBR, but I decided to start this kind of early because it's a chunker, but it's not that many pages. It just looks very big. And this weekend I will have a visitor. One of my very, very good friends is coming here, so I won't be able to read a lot. And so I thought, you know, I can give this a little bit of a head start for the Scallywagathon, but it's probably like 10 pages or something. So yeah, I will start this one. And this will give me my A in Potions.
So, this is some great weather we're having right now.
Hey there guys! So today is the first day of the Scallywagathon and it's already noon and I have not read anything. So we're having a great start. My first book that I want to read is The Deep by Rivers Solomon, and I would love to finish the whole book today because I don't think otherwise I will get to all the books I want to read this week. But it's 150 pages and I'm very slow today. Yeah, so we'll see. I will get started on this one. I still don't know if this will be a separate vlog or if this will just be part of my vlog for August in general. We'll see how the week goes. But yeah, I will start this book now and let you know what I think. So it is day 2 of the Scallywagathon and I finished my first book, The Deep, by Rivers Solomon, and I wish I could, you know, talk about this very eloquently, but to be honest, I think I will have to think about this book a little bit more. I definitely love the kind of theme of this book and the idea that is behind it. I think it is always very interesting when a story deals with a society where a single person keeps the memory for all of them. It's something that I've only ever read in The Giver before this book. So yeah, I was very happy to see a similar storyline in another book, but this one is also very short, similar to The Giver, so I feel like there's always so much more that could be explored with this trope, and I wish that, you know, I knew more stories like that. So if you have any, you know, recommendations, please let me know. But now for this book, I don't know how I feel about the story of itself, and especially the ending is kind of something that I will have to think about a little bit more. And you know, this is just a typical situation of me not being the target audience probably, but I just know that I want to watch more videos that are about this book, that discuss this book, want to read some more Goodreads reviews and stuff like that, and really immerse myself in that. And yeah, as I said, just think about it a little bit more, because right now I don't know how I feel about certain aspects of it. But yeah, this also has kind of a female-female relationship. It's hard to tell, but yeah. And as I said, the main premise is that there are kind of mermaids. They have their own name that they use for themselves, and they descended from pregnant slaves who were thrown overboard of the slave trader ships while giving birth, basically. So these kind of mer creatures, they have to deal with that trauma, because obviously to be descending from something horrible like that is kind of a trauma for the whole people. And yeah, it's kind of about that, but I just wish there would be even more of it. It was just a bit short, and I wanted so much more exploration of this trope, because I think it's so interesting to, think about what the world would be like if only one person has the whole history and like everyone else is living these kind of untethered lives that are just in the moment the whole time. I think that's such an interesting theme. And yeah, I really like this, but I think there is even more for me to explore when I think about it more. So the next book is something I hope I can read very quickly, and that's Ignite Me, the third book in the Shadow Me trilogy. This has 400 pages, so for me to stay kind of on track, I would have to read 200 pages tomorrow and the day after tomorrow to finish it in time. We'll see whether I can do that, but I hope so, because these are super quick reads and I don't need a lot of brain power for them. So it's the end of the 18th of August now, and today I read pretty much half of Ignite Me, which was my goal for today, because I want to finish this reread tomorrow. And I love this book so much. It's such a good time. I'm having so much fun rereading this. Kenji is my favorite. He has so many good lines in this book, and I'm just laughing out loud the whole time. Kenji is so good. And then I also really like Wanna. I know that he's a problematic character, but he just makes me feel all the feels, and that's something that not a lot of book characters do. So yeah, this is definitely the best one in the first trilogy, I must say. I think it's the best one overall. Yeah, I just really have a very good time with this book. So it's the 19th of August, and I just finished Ignite Me by Tara Murphy. So I finished off the first trilogy, and this book is my favorite of the first trilogy, and I think of the whole series. I mean, I haven't read the final book, I think it's called Imagine Me yet, but the angst is just so strong in this one, and the drama is amazing, and Kenji has the best quips and stuff like that. So yeah, I really love this book. It's definitely the best one in the series, and these are kind of like guilty pleasure reads, but I just love to be sucked in by these books, and they're just so fun and fast. So yeah, I'm glad I finally finished off this first trilogy, because I've been meaning to reread these books since April, I think. Yeah, wow. So now my next book for the Scallywagathon, which will also count towards the Magical Readathon again, is A Man Called Ove. I already started this. I'm currently 30 pages into it, so not far at all. And I hope that I can finish this within 2 days as well. We will see. This is not quite as long as Ignite Me. It just looks longer, but yeah. I'm not quite sure how fast I can read this, because I think the themes are a little bit more, advanced, adult, grown up. So we'll see. I'll try my best, and I hope I can finish this within 2 days. So today is the 21st of August, and I just finished A Man Called Ove. And this was a very emotional ending, to be fair. And I actually cried quite a lot. So yeah, this is not... this has a lot of triggers in it that people don't really talk about. but I think I will talk more about that in my wrap-up. But this is basically, you know, what's written on the back is pretty accurate. This is about a man who lost his wife and now he thinks about killing himself. But then weird new neighbors arrive and they just don't let him do it because they always demand that he helps them. And this, the wife of this couple that moves in next door, I don't really know how to say her name. I would say something like Pavane, something like that. It's probably wrong. But she is my favorite part of this book. She's amazing. I love her. She's like such a fierce person and I think she's glorious. So yeah, this was a very unexpected read. I really didn't think it would go, you know, to the topics that it did go to. And it really reminded me of my grandpa. So yeah, I guess that it's why it hit home so much. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting read. I decided to give it 4, maybe 4.5 stars. It definitely has its flaws. I think it's very easy to see where it goes. It's not really surprising with the main plot points, I would say. There's a couple of, you know, things that happen at the side that are surprising. And I feel like for most part you're just kind of drudging through the book. And it's not like you're really, you know, sucked in or anything like that, because it is, you know, it's just narrated in this kind of vignette style where you have like each chapter being about a different situation kind of. So it doesn't really get that flow kind of. But still, yeah, it's a very good book and I can't say anything really bad about it apart from, you know, it being not slow, but just a little bit, you know, stretched out, I would say. So yeah, this is my 3rd book for the Scallywagathon. I only have 1 book left and 2 days, so I'm pretty confident that I can totally do this. Hey guys, today's the 23rd of August and it's the last day of the Scallywagathon, and I just finished my last book for this readathon, which was Things We Say in the Dark by Kirsty Logan. It's Kirsty. I'm never sure about that name. So yeah, this is a short story collection and I gave it exactly 3.5 stars. So I averaged out, you know, all the ratings for the individual stories and I ended up with 3.5. There was one story in here I gave 5 stars to. There were a couple that, you know, were very visceral and interesting and really gave me something. And then other stories I just really didn't understand and I felt very dumb reading them, not really knowing what they were about. So yeah, this is a collection that I think might be interesting if you're into literary horror. It has some body horror in there and also a lot about, you know, being pregnant and having children. And all of these stories are about what it means to be a woman, except for one, I think, which has a male protagonist. And then also, there's a lot of female-female couples in here, so if you're looking for that, that's also something you find in multiple stories of this collection. And there's also this kind of tale that goes on in the background, kind of. You always have like one page in between the stories that again tells a story, which I found to be interesting as well, because it kind of combined all of these stories into one narrative at the end, so I really enjoyed that as well. I think it's a very interesting collection, and as I said, if you're into more like horror stuff, you're looking for some Halloween reads, I think this might be great for that. So yeah, I finished the Scallywagathon right on time. I'm very proud of myself because reading 4 books in 8 days is not something I usually do, and it was a lot of fun. I especially enjoyed joining all the Twitter things that were going on. That was a very fun addition and something I had never done in a readathon before. So yeah, I feel like this was a good decision to make for me. And now I still have 3 books left on my Magical Readathon TBR, so I'm not really sure if I can do that. I have 8 days for that one left, and yeah, as I said, reading so many books in just 8 days is not what I usually do. And now I have a huge backlog of YouTube videos I haven't watched, and yeah, so we'll see how it goes.
Footnote 48. So, the inspiration in
Good morning, guys. Today is the 25th of August, and I have two updates for you. So, yesterday I started Northanger Abbey by Val McDermott, and I'm now halfway through with it, so I hope I can finish it tonight. But I really thought this was something different because this book is a retelling, like a very basic retelling of Northanger Abbey, just set in present time. And I thought it was a crime story or a thriller inspired by Northanger Abbey, but it's really just the same story, only they have cell phones and sports cars now. So, so far this one is very disappointing because Northanger Abbey is my least favorite Jane Austen book. I've not yet read Mansfield Park, so that might still change everything, but so far Northanger Abbey is my least favorite Austen. So reading a retelling, not great experience. I still will finish it because otherwise I wouldn't have a book for one of the challenges, because I already had to cheat with this one to make it work somehow. But yeah, it's quite disappointing, to be honest. I think it will turn out to be like a low 3-star book for me. I think I gave the original Northanger Abbey like 3.5 stars. I really don't like the characters, I really don't like the story, and I just don't like Northanger Abbey so much. So yeah, I usually really like Val McDermott. I think she's a great author. So yeah, I just expected something completely different from this book. And then the other thing is that I have finished my audiobook Beauty Queens by Libba Bray, and I am so happy because this audiobook was amazing. Now, I think Beauty Queens is from 2011, so it's 9 years old now. And I know that it gets quite mixed reviews, but I absolutely loved the story. The audiobook is fantastic, by the way, because since it was still all taped down for, CDs, it's a very different format from our usual audiobooks nowadays. And at first I was so confused because there was always this kind of like whisper voice saying weird stuff in the middle of chapters. And then I realized that that was when the new CD started. So the new CD always, or maybe stopped or started with this whisper word to tell you that now you have to change to the next CD. I don't know, it was just very fun once I figured it out. And yeah, I just really love this book. It's definitely satire, so if you don't like that, I think you will not like this book. It is not meant to be taken seriously in a way. And it follows these beauty queens who end up crashing with their plane, and so they're stuck on an deserted island, which is not really deserted, and no one's coming to get them, basically. And what I loved about this book is that it is very feminist, of course, and as you would expect, most of these beauty queens are straight, blonde, white girls who maybe are not the smartest, like what you would expect, thinking about these kind of pageants. But there are a couple of characters who did not fit this. For example, we have a deaf character, or a hard of hearing character. We have a trans woman, we have a black girl, we have a girl of Indian descent, and we have a lesbian as well. So this is a very diverse cast of characters. Now, I would say that this book is great for white girls in their teens who are maybe not that well versed with all of these things yet, because there are some problematic scenes. But I think if you are, a young girl who hasn't really thought about that yet, who maybe has never met a trans girl, I think this could be so helpful to, understand the first basic things about that. And also, yeah, so there is, some transphobia, there's some, some racist moments happening, but they are also discussed in this book. People are called out for it, and you can definitely see these girls evolve over time because they're now forced to spend this time together and to even cooperate so that things work out. And so you get to know all of these girls, and you see that, you know, what maybe you thought of them up front is also stereotypical. For example, one of my favorite characters is Tiara, and Tiara is just not that quick. She just takes time to learn and to understand things, and I just really, really loved her character because she showed that even though you maybe are just starting to accept how diverse the world is because your parents always told you that certain things are wrong or something, that, you know, it's okay to take your time and to think things through. And I just loved her development so much. And there's this one scene at the end where there are like evil persons on the island at the end, and one of those is calling her dumb, and she has this like internal thing where she's like, well, she might not be the quickest, but she's still trying to learn, and I really, really love that so much. So yeah, I feel like at first you're like, oh my god, like all of these girls are so wrong and they just care about their appearances and stuff like that. But then you get to know all of these girls and you realize that there's so much more to them, and that, you know, all of them should be friends and should be hanging out together and should support each other, and that's just what's happening, and it's just so nice to see. Obviously, as I said, it's satire, so there's a lot of crazy shit going down, but it was just so much fun. I really, really enjoyed it, and I hope that maybe some more people who are into these kind of things pick this book up. It was my first library, and it was the one I heard the most mixed things about, so I'm very glad that I liked this one, because now I think that all of her other books I will totally love, so we'll see about that. But yeah, that was a very lengthy clip right there, but I just love this book so much, and I love Tiara so much. She's so cute. So yeah, I have about 15 minutes of the audiobook left because there's a little bit of extra information at the end from the author. It's also really fun because Libba Bray reads her own audiobook, and I would say she does a fantastic job with the girls. You can definitely always tell which one of the girls is talking. Her male voices could be better, but you know, it's always fun to have a book read by the actual author. Also, something that people might not like, but I really enjoyed, were the use of footnotes in this book, because it was done in a very good way that didn't interrupt the reading process, and then also sound effects. There were quite a few, and apart from this weird beeping sound right at the end, fantastic. So yeah, really enjoyed this audiobook.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Okay, it's still the 25th of August, and I just finished Northanger Abbey by Will McDermott. And what did I just read? From the flap in the back, I would say that Will McDermott is at least bi, because it says she's living with her female partner. The homophobia at the end of this book is real. Like, what the hell? Why? How? Why? I'm so confused. Even the cat is confused. She's looking at me like, what's going on? Yeah, sorry about that. Wow, this was so bad. This was so bad. Never read this book, please. If you listen to me, don't read this book. It was horrible. Just read the original. You know, it's all about people wanting money and then not getting money and stuff like that. But this was something else. This was completely horrible. I gave it 1 star on Goodreads right now. I think I will give it 1.5 stars overall, because I feel like the writing style was a good imitation of Jane Austen, but apart from that, there's no reason to read this book. Absolutely none. Read the original, put this in the trash, and that's all I have to say about it. Today's the 26th of August, and I just read the first 150 pages in Graceling by Christine Cashore. And so far I'm not really finding my groove with this book. I don't really like the main character, I have to say. She's supposed to be that like really good fighter and like basically a killer, but she doesn't really want to kill because, you know, people dying and stuff. And so she has this evil uncle who's also the king of this land, and he's kind of forcing her to punish people for him. She doesn't really like doing that. And then she also has this kind of underground spy ring situation where they try to protect people from evil like her uncle. And yeah, the one thing that really bothers me in here so far, like really bothers me, are the fight scenes. They just feel so unreal. Like, I'm always like, how, when she's in a position like that, like, how does she do this next? It just doesn't fit together. It feels like the author has no idea where the limbs of her characters are when they're fighting. And it's just really bothersome. So if you have a character who's like in, you know, one-on-one combat situations all the time, learn how to fight. It's just really bothersome. So yeah, I don't know how to fight, but still it doesn't feel right when I read it. So yeah, that would be Graceling. And then I also started a new audiobook yesterday, and that is The Sundown Motel. That is kind of like a creepy thriller that has a ghost story vibe, and I only have listened to half an hour so far, but I'm really intrigued, and I hope it will be, you know, very scary, because I'm just, you know, starting to get in the mood for scary books, and I always like to have some, you know, transitioning books in September to get into the October reading mood. So I hope the Sundown Motel will be a good one in that. So keep you updated on that one. And we have the worst storm here today, and I don't like it. I wanted to stop, but what can you do? Hey guys, so it's the next day. I guess it's the 7th of August, and I just had the biggest realization ever. Is that called an epiphany? I don't know. So I was really stressing out with my Magical Readathon TBR because I wanted to become a professor, and for that I had to read 7 books. And so at the beginning of the month I picked my TBR, and I still have 2 of these books left. So I've already switched out one for an easier option, because I still need the O in potions, because that's the subject I want to teach. And for that you have to read a book that is more than 450 pages, which is great if you're running late on Readathon. And for some reason I was convinced that I had to read one more book to get an A in herbology, which is a book with flowers on the cover. So I was really stressing out, and I was really pushing myself so hard. Didn't watch my YouTube videos. I'm like a week behind on those. And yeah, I was just really stressed, and it wasn't that much fun anymore. But then I looked at this little sheet that I made for myself with all the possible challenges that I could do. And I realized that I have already got 2 A's in random subjects, which, you know, is what I needed for the professor career. So I already have an A in Ancient Runes because I finished a book by Libba Bray, and you have to read a book where the author name starts with a B. And I already have an A in Charms, which is to read a humorous book. So I'm completely fine. I only have to finish the 450-page book now, and I'm done. So such a relief. I can't believe how dumb I was. So yeah, I wanted to share that maybe epiphany with you. I don't know if that's the correct word for it, but yeah, I'm relieved now. So it's the 29th of August today. I finally got a haircut yesterday, which is great because yeah, My French was getting very long. Now about 300 pages into Graceling, and I still have a very hard time with this book because I didn't expect the amount of romance in here, and it's really just a kind of, 2008 fantasy romance basically. And since I can't really get behind the main character and I don't really care about any of the other characters, I just don't really enjoy the romance either. Right now things are picking up a little bit again and the stakes are a little bit higher now, but the middle part where they're just, traveling through woods and dealing with their feelings, it was so boring. So yeah, for me this is just like a 3-star, I guess. If the ending gets a little bit more interesting, it will be a 3-star read. But yeah, I'm very disappointed because I thought that this would be much better because I've heard so much praise for it. So yeah, that's kind of sad, but what can you do? I hope that I will get to page 350 today, and so I have then a little bit left for tomorrow and Monday, and then the Magical Readathon will be over. I will be a Hogwarts... I don't want to say that word. I will be a professor, a magical professor, and I will have a little bit more like casual reading time again, because this month, the last couple of weeks, I really tried to get in a lot of reading. So today's the 30th of August, and right now I'm preparing an onion tart, which is why I look like I've cried my eyes out. Unfortunately, it's not because of this book, but I have finally finished Graceling by Christine Kishore, and unfortunately this was a huge disappointment for me. I really went into this thinking it would be something completely different than it is, and that is obviously also my fault because, I just bought into the hype and I thought this would be a, nice fantasy book reminiscent of the Queen of the Tearling, but it's not. This is a fantasy romance, and I feel like the plot is a very minor thing in this, and it's definitely more about the relationship. And for me, this story was just very unbelievable, unfortunately. So we follow Katza, who is graced. So she has a special ability, and when we start off with her as a main character, we think her special ability is killing, because she's just a very good fighter and no one can win in a fight with her. And she has this kind of underground organization called the Council, and they try to bring good into the world. But her uncle is an evil king who forces her to punish people in his name. And that sounds like a good plot, but actually it was just also unbelievable. For one, I really didn't believe that Katza was a good fighter because the fight scenes in here never made sense to me. They always pulled me right out of the story, and I was like, whose limb is where, and what is she doing with her foot right now, and where did this knife come from? So yeah, I just felt like the fight scenes were never well done in a way that you could actually, picture what's going on. And then very early on, she meets this guy, and he's a prince, and he's looking for his grandfather who was kidnapped. And they find the grandfather, and they bring him to safety. And then it turns out that maybe there's more behind this, so they decide to travel to this faraway kingdom. And then basically the whole middle of this book is them just traveling and having feelings for each other, which was, a romance, and I just didn't feel the romance at all, to be honest, because, I couldn't really believe the main character, so the romance also wasn't my cup of tea. I mean, it's cute and stuff, but I just don't read romance, so yeah, that was great. And then in the end, there is this other evil king who's like super evil, and he has a very big grace, so a very dangerous one, a very powerful one. And it just doesn't make sense, because honestly, if he was such a bad guy and he had such a powerful grace, like, why did he not try to use it before? Like, why did he wait until Katza and this prince were on his trail to start, trying to kind of do evil with this?
it was just so unbelievable. I mean, he has been king for a while. Like, he has a daughter who's like, I don't know, 11, 12. I don't know how old she's supposed to be. But, you know, obviously he has ruled this country for so many years, and he's never tried to do, you know, some conquering with his amazing grace that, you know, no one can withstand. It just doesn't make sense to me. And then also, the ending was so weird. Like, they build up this king to be this very, very, very dangerous being who can, you know, not be defeated, basically. And then he is defeated within 5 pages, I think. So, I mean, obviously, you know, it's gonna have a happy end and stuff like that, but 5 pages? I don't know. It felt like 5 pages, maybe it's more, I don't know. But it was just super quick and super easy, and it just didn't make any sense to me. And yeah, so overall, this was just a huge disappointment for me. Really not the book I would have chosen, basically, if I would have known what it's really about. And so I decided to give it 3 stars out of kindness, and because it has been published more than 10 years ago. So, you know, the YA fantasy genre has evolved quite a lot since then, and keeping that in mind, I can give it 3 stars, basically. But yeah, really not my favorite. But with that being said, I have managed all of the challenges to become a magical professor in the Magical Readathon, which is great. I'm very happy about that. And then I will have the wrap up in more detail. So yeah, that's my chicken for now. So it's time now for the wrap-up part, and I hope you brought snacks because this is gonna take a while. The first book I finished in August was Unravel Me by Tahara Mafi. I'm currently rereading the whole series to finally finish it off because I still have not read the last book. But this follows a girl called Juliet, and in the first book we meet her in an asylum where she's put because her touch is lethal. But during the first book she gets out of that asylum and she starts taking down the government of her world. And we follow this whole, you know, storyline in this book. Now, this book has a little bit of a slow start. I'm not the biggest fan of Adam, so that is probably why it just, you know, the beginning part is not really that interesting to me, but then the second half was so worthwhile. The angst, the drama, it's just all in here. Like, if you like teenage feelings, drama, you will like this book. And so I gave it 3.5 stars on reread. Then next I read this story called Fracture Me and finished off this collection of 2 stories called Unite Me, also in the same series. This just, you know, Fracture Me is a story from the point of view of Adam, which is what drags this collection down for me because I really don't like Adam. And I gave this 3 stars. Then I finished my audiobook, and that was A Song Below Water by Bethany C. Morrow. I always have a hard time saying that name. I'm not great with the TH. And this audiobook follows 2 girls. One is a siren and one thinks she's a normal human being and she likes playing a mermaid in a Ren fair. And these 2 characters, they're both black girls and they are like sisters. They're basically best friends and they live together with the family of the siren girl, and they go to the same school, and it just follows them being, you know, black girls, best friends, and also struggling with some supernatural problems. Now this has a kind of paranormal, kind of urban fantasy vibe to it. It's also set in Portland, which is kind of weird considering what's been going on in Portland this year. And yeah, it's just a really nice story. I really enjoyed listening to this audiobook. I love everything that has to do with sirens or mermaids. It's just fun to listen to. I think the strongest part of this audiobook is the relationship between the 2 main characters. You have their alternating chapters and stuff like that. And yeah, they're just so... yeah, such good friends, and it's just great to see them. But it also covers some really hard topics as well, such as, you know, being a black woman facing police and stuff like that. And yeah, just overall, I think it was a fun story, but sometimes, especially in the beginning, the kind of paranormal parts were confusing because it is set in our normal world, but then there's like all these kind of beings.
And it's just a little bit confusing to figure out what the hell's going on. So I ended up giving this 4 stars. So then I decided it would be a great time to start my Magical Readathon that was going on in August, and the first book I read for that was The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. This is kind of a thriller mystery book. It follows a travel journalist called Lo, and she is invited to this cruise ship. It's a very, very tiny cruise ship that is supposed to, cruise around in the Atlantic, or yeah, I think it's the Atlantic, to see the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights. And it's a very exclusive kind of deal, and she's supposed to write about that for her magazine. And right before she goes on that trip, someone breaks into her apartment while she's in there. And so she is already kind of, stressed out about that. It was a very traumatic experience for her. And so when she gets on that ship, on the first night, she thinks she sees someone thrown overboard. But this person she saw doesn't exist on this ship, or they never existed on that ship. And so it's all about, figuring out what the hell is going on. I think that the beginning definitely was a very claustrophobic tale, being on that ship and nobody believes her and everyone's like, well, we've never seen someone like that. Like, how could they have been on that ship and then disappear and nobody noticed? And it also gave me some nightmares because, not being believed because you're a woman, because you have mental health issues and stuff like that. It's just very triggering for me, I felt. So yeah, this was a book that, it was interesting, but it wasn't my favorite thriller. And I felt like the ending just had these typical tropes that I just don't really like seeing, like, when she figures it all out and you basically have all the clues, then they have to get in some kind of a chase just to make it more interesting at the end. And I just really don't like this. If your mystery isn't good, then, you can't really cover it up with a chase scene at the end. So I decided to give this 3.5 stars in the end. And so this gave me an A in Defense Against the Dark Arts. Next up, I read Spontaneous by Aaron Stormer. This is a book I had on my TBR for so long and I never read it. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I just kept overlooking it on my shelves. This is a story about a group of teenagers. They're in their senior year of high school and then they start exploding and nobody knows why. So it all starts on a normal, afternoon, and one of the classmates of our main character, what's her name? Mara, just explodes in the middle of her lesson. So this follows kind of, the events after that. It's supposed to be ironic and satirical, making fun of, how we deal with crisis as a, humankind, basically. There's also some quarantine in here, so if you want some more of that in your life, definitely go for this book. But yeah, overall, I found it interesting. I think it's a fun book for teenagers. There's a very, very good sex scene in here that I really enjoyed. It was overall just very positive. The main character is a very loud girl, and I enjoyed that. I liked that it's not like this, she's not like the other girls, but she is not like you would see a stereotypical girl. And then there's also a friendship bit in here that at the end just was so nice. I really, really enjoyed it. And yeah, it was a fun, quick read, but nothing life-changing for me. And so I decided to give this 3.5 stars as well. And this gave me an A in Charms. So now we're getting into the crossover because I also participated in the Scallywagathon. So this was the first book I read for that, but also the Magical Readathon. It's The Deep by River Solomon. And this book is very, very interesting because you are following a kind of mermaid. They have a fancier name. They are called Vajinru or something like that. So these beings are descendants of pregnant black slaves who were thrown overboard by slave owners because they were too much trouble, and so they were thrown overboard, and the children that were born in the water turned out to be these kind of mermaid creatures. And we follow one of those who is the keeper of memories, kind of. So the premise of this is very similar to The Giver, where there's one person in this society that holds all the memories, so that everyone else can kind of get on with their lives. And now the current mermaid that is supposed to do that, she's not really well equipped for it, and she suffers a lot because of it. And they have these ceremonies where they share the memories with everyone for about, I think, 3 days, and then they take all the memories back, and they need that to kind of be rooted again, to remember where they came from and who they are. And so while she's doing that, she decides to run away, and we basically follow that, and you know, from a couple points of views, just see this unfolding. And I did really enjoy this. I gave this 4 stars. It's a very short novella, and to be honest, I would have wanted even more of it because it was so interesting. I really loved the concept. So if you know other books that deal with this kind of memory thing, I just really enjoy that. So there's also a lot in here that is targeted more towards people of color who understand the kind of importance of memory, and also lack of you know, memory, not from a person but from you know, a group that you are part of. I think that then it holds even more value, because obviously I don't really, you know, reverberate with it, kind of. So it, yeah. So I guess you should definitely check out this book. I just love this kind of trope with the memory so much, and I think that this book had some really amazing moments, but just the overall storyline was a little bit lacking for me. And yeah, there were just a couple of things where I just wanted a little bit more. So I gave it 4 stars. And this gave me my E in Defense Against the Dark Arts, and also was the first stop of my Scallywagathon. So then the next book for my Scallywagathon was Ignite Me, the 3rd book in this series by Tara Murphy, and I gave this one 4 stars. I think this might be my favorite book in the whole series. As I said, I haven't read the final one yet, but I really like this one. It's so dramatic, over the top, there is so much drama. I just love it. Yeah, it's definitely, you know, one of those book series that you just get so invested in the characters, and you just, you know, feel all the drama with them. And I love Kenji so much, and yeah, as I said, I think this is my favorite book in the series. It's just really fun. So that was my second stop for the Scallywagathon. Then the next book I finished is A Man Called Ove by Fredrik Backman, and this was a very tearful read for me, which I did not expect. It also was a little bit triggering at the beginning, because this deals with an older man. He is in his 50s, I believe, and he was just let go by his company, and that's where you start off the story with, and you learn that he's very grumpy. And within the first couple of pages you realize that his wife has died, and that he is trying to commit suicide because he thinks that no one needs him anymore, and there's no reason for him to live anymore because they don't need him at work, and his wife is gone, and he wants to be reunited with his wife because it's the only person he ever really loved apart from his parents. And yeah, so it's a very it sounds like a very heartbreaking story, and as I said, the beginning was very triggering for me because I felt like I could see a lot of my own grandpa in this character, because he also had this huge struggle when he was let go by his company back in the day. And fortunately my grandma is still around, and she is definitely keeping things up, kind of. But yeah, it's just, you know, hard to read about if you know someone who is similar to this character in some way. And then there is this couple moving in next door, and the wife of this couple is from Iran, and she is amazing. She was my favorite character in this book. She is so snarky. She doesn't, you know, take crap from anyone, and she definitely cleans up his life. So her husband is not very talented, to say the least. So Ove has to step in and help a lot with stuff around the house. And yeah, that just brings meaning into his life again, basically. And that's kind of the story you're following. But the ending is very heartbreaking. So yeah, overall it was just a nice book. I enjoyed it. It has this kind of writing style that, you know, jumps from occasion to occasion. It doesn't feel like a very connected story. It's almost like little vignettes from the day-to-day life. So yeah, I decided to give it 4 stars and really enjoyed it. So that gave me my A in potions and was my 3rd stop for the Scallywagathon. Then next up, I read Things We Say in the Dark by Kirsty Logan. Kirsty Logan, yes. This is a short story collection that I picked up from the library. It looked very interesting, and I have not read anything by Kirsty Logan yet. But this is a very interesting short story collection. It is separated into 3 parts. I think it's the home, the house, the child, and the past, and you have stories in these kind of brackets. This is definitely a dark collection, and there are a couple of stories that were quite creepy. There's also a couple of stories that weren't. And I felt like the first stories were stronger than the later ones. This is also a very queer collection because it talks about female-female relationships a lot. And yeah, I really enjoyed it, but it wasn't really something that stuck in my mind, to be honest. So I have forgotten about most of these stories already. And yeah, it's just a vague feeling that is left kind of these stories. So maybe it is just because I read it so fast for the Scallywagathon and I should have taken more time with it. But I feel like most of those stories didn't really stick with me. So in the end, I decided to give the whole collection 3.5 stars, even though there were stories in here that I thought were very, very good. And that was my last stop for the Scallywagathon. So after that, I went back to the Magical Readathon. So then the next book I finished was Northanger Abbey by Val McDermott. This is a retelling of Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. It's my least favorite Austen, so we were not off to a great start. And I thought that this was a reimagining of Northanger Abbey, but with an actual crime story, because Val McDermott usually writes crime stories, and I did enjoy some of hers before it, but it's not. It's like literally a retelling. So, you know, reading a modern day retelling of a Jane Austen novel that I don't really like was not a good idea. I found this to be very boring. I really disliked the characters. I felt like, you know, it was well done in a sense that it felt like it was put in a more modern day setting. But this book doesn't age well. Like, the people use Facebook and Twitter for stuff that nobody would use them for today. Like, you know, using DM stuff with actual friends where like, no, people don't use Twitter to DM their real life friends, I guess. So yeah, apart from that, as I said, I really don't like the characters. And I mean, Northanger Abbey is supposed to be kind of satirical, and I guess that this book is too, but it just, I don't know, did I need a book that makes fun of like the Twilight era? I don't know. I really don't know. But if you're interested in that, maybe you like it. What completely brought this book down for me is the ending. Val McDermott is in a relationship with a woman. And the ending is so homophobic that I couldn't handle it. I just didn't understand. I literally didn't understand. So yeah, would I recommend this? Absolutely not. I gave it 1.5 stars. I don't know what the half star is for. Yeah, don't read this. Please don't read this. It was horrible. It was really horrible, I promise. But this gave me my E in potions. Then the next book I finished was another audiobook, and that was Beauty Queens by Libba Bray. This is an older audiobook. I think the book is from 2011, which is kind of funny because back then audiobooks were on CD. And so they left the kind of CD bits in there. So whenever it would have changed the CD to the next number, you have a little voice saying something funny about the number that you're at. At first I was super confused because I had no idea what this voice was. But I think around like 7 or 8, I figured it out. So yeah, that was kind of fun to listen to. Also, this audiobook is read or narrated by Libba Bray herself, so that was super fun. I would highly recommend it. I think if you want to read this book, get the audiobook. It was so good. Like, she does the Texan accent so well. I think she's even from Texas, so yeah, I love that. But yeah, this book is just so cool. It follows a plane of beauty queens, and they crash, and they end up on this deserted island, and they have to fend for themselves for the first time, really, because usually they were put against each other in competitions, and now they have to, you know, start to work together. They get to know each other, and they face all their stigma and their prejudice and stuff like that. And it's a very diverse cast. Like, if you remember 2011, very diverse cast. There is a lesbian girl, there's a girl that's hard of hearing, there is a black girl, there's a girl of Indian descent, there is a feminist, of course, Libba Bray needed a feminist, and there is a trans girl. So you have all of these girls on this island, and they're trying to figure out what to do, and some of them still hold on to this idea that they will be rescued very quickly because they think that they're so important because of this huge beauty contest, and others are like, well, nobody's coming, so we have to, you know, figure out what to do. And later on there's also some pirates that land there, and it's just craziness. It's really just craziness. And I loved it for the humor. I think it was such a good way to portray, you know, female relationships and female friendships, and that even though girls usually are put against each other in society, that they can form very meaningful bonds, and even though they, you know, might meet each other with like very harsh prejudices, they can still become really good friends if you give them time, and they just, you know, get to know each other. And yeah, it was just very wholesome in that way. I would say that this is not the perfect book if you are in one of those kind of diversity categories. This is a very bad term, I know, but I think it can be harder to read, for example, if you're black or if you're trans, because there are a lot of these kind of typical prejudices brought up, but then they're called out. But I feel like, you know, I think that this book is definitely more targeted towards, you know, cis white girls. So they can kind of confront maybe their prejudices better, and there are kind of some questions in there that maybe these girls might have as well, but it's not comfortable if you were faced with these questions for all your life. You know what I mean? So I guess that this, you know, this is not a representation, it's not own voices, basically, you know, but I still think it can be very valuable because it takes away from, you know, black writers having to explain why certain questions aren't asked and stuff like that. So yeah, I think this is a very fun book, and if you're in the mood for it, get the audiobook. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, and I already miss all of the girls, to be honest. So that book then gave me an A in Ancient Runes. And then last but not least, I read Graceling by Christine Geschur. And I was disappointed, but I don't want to say too much about this book. This is set in a fantasy world where there are certain people who have graces, and graces are special abilities. They could be anything. They could be like you're a very good cook. They could also be you can kill anyone. So we follow our main character. Her name is Katza, and she thinks she has a killing grace. So she's very good at torturing and killing people. And her uncle, who is a king of one of the countries, he likes to exploit that, and he likes to have her do his dirty work, basically. But then one day, Katza meets a strange boy who is from one of the other countries, and he's looking for his grandfather. And they decide to kind of work together to find out what's going on, because they think that something really bad is going on in this kind of world with the different kingdoms, and that there is someone doing something very, very bad. That's as vague as I want to keep it now. I said a couple things more in the vlog part if you're interested. What I didn't know about this book is that it is very, very romance heavy, and I just really don't like these kind of YA fantasy romances. I thought this would be more like The Queen of the Tierling, and that's completely my fault. But yeah, this is definitely not. This is, I would say, like 80% romance and 20% something else. And you can definitely see that also by the ending. It's resolved so quickly. You have this very, very powerful opponent who's brought down within like 5 pages. And that's just not the kind of fantasy that I want to read. So I decided to give this weaker 3 stars, just because I know that this book is not, you know, objectively bad. It's just nothing that interests me. And also one thing that really bothered me is that I found the fight scenes to be written really badly. So they always brought me out of the story again. I was constantly questioning where all the limbs of the fighters were, because I just did not understand some of the moves that were described. And I'm not a good fighter, I don't want to say that, but if I can't even imagine what they're doing, there's something wrong. So yeah, 3 stars for that one. I don't know if I want to read the other books. I might, because they are, you know, focusing on other characters, and I just really didn't bond with Katza that much. I don't know, we'll see. And this then gave me my O for potions. And that means for the Magical Readathon, I ended up being a magical professor again, which is awesome because, yeah, I did that last year and it was so much fun. And this year I read even more because I also did the Scallywagathon, and it had 2 books that did not fit into this TBR. Yeah, and I also had to finish off some books at the beginning of the month that weren't on my TBR. So I felt very accomplished this month. I've read a ton, but I also feel like I need a little bit of a reading break in September because I want to read all the books in October. October is one of my favorite reading months. So yeah, taking it slow in September, but I guess that's fine. I have 2 books and an audiobook that I'm currently in the middle of that I quickly wanted to mention here at the end if you're interested, and then I'll let you go. I'm still only halfway through Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. This is a sci-fi story collection, and I have 4 stories left in here. I also have, I think, 1 or 1.5 chapters left of The Two Towers in Lord of the Rings that I'm reading with my boyfriend, and we just can't get it done. I don't know, it's just a curse right now. And then for my audiobook, I'm currently listening to The Sundown Motel, and it's very creepy and I love it. So yeah, you'll definitely hear more about that in my September vlog. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it wasn't too long. If you have some thoughts, leave them in the comments. Also leave a like if you enjoyed it. That would make me very happy. And if you subscribe, I will talk to you soon. Bye!